Very excited for what's coming this evening. This is a very special program that I am very happy to see happening. This exhibition is a tool for education. It's a tool to show the world what happened that morning to the community of music lovers, of people who just came to dance in nature. And our lives changed completely since 413 of our friends are no longer with us. Our whole crime was to go and dance in nature on Saturday morning in our home country. Over a year ago, we were at the exhibition in Los Angeles. It was our second exhibition, after exhibition in New York. And one of the things that stood out to us very much was the noise that was being made on campuses about what happened since October 8th and forward. And it seemed like no one cared about what happened on October 7th. It seemed like people had forgotten. And we felt mounted. We felt like people just forgot that we had gone through the most terrible thing that people could have gone through. But there were small rays of light. One of those rays of light is Miss Taryn that will be joining us this evening. She came to the NOVA exhibition in LA, and she'll share with you her story of what made her go that day. But she has since gone through a journey with us and become an amazing advocate. So she will be sharing with you what changed her mind, what made her see what we went through that morning. So again, thank you very much for being with us, and welcome.
So hi, I am Dr. Klugman. I'm a professor at DePaul University. And as you probably know, DePaul have one of the longest and most intense encampments anywhere in the Midwest, and for a good part of the country. And Taryn is, she was soon to be a graduate of the same place I graduated from. So we just got to know each other a little bit about 10 minutes ago. So it is my honor to just sort of be her moderator and her role of support today while she talks to you all. So Taryn, thank you for coming all the way from the West Coast to be here with us today. And I guess just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're studying, where you grew up.
Hi everyone, my name is Taryn. I'm a fourth year at Stanford University studying human biology, and I'm a pre-med student. Stanford University was one of the first to hold the encampments for pro-Palestine, and we were like the longest duration as well. And I grew up in Beaumont, California. It's a small city in Southern California, and it's very Republican. I kind of experienced a lot of different racist incidences that made me want to go as left as possible. So yeah.
Did you grow up in a religious tradition or none?
Yes, I grew up Christian. Went to church every Sunday. Yeah.
Did you know any Jewish or Israeli people growing up?
No, my hometown was pretty monolithic. It was predominantly white. There's very few minorities there.
So I'm going to take you back to about a little over 2 years ago, and the horrible events that we've seen in this exhibit happening. It was the next day here in the United States, October 8th. What were you doing?
October 8th, well, first, on October 7th itself, I did not see any post about what was going on. I didn't find out until October 8th, and I saw many Palestinian flags on my social media. I would, scroll through my stories and just see Palestinian flag, Palestinian flag. And I thought genuinely when I first seen it, I was like, man, did Gaza get invaded? And it wasn't until later on I found out that it was Israel. And yeah.
So what were your sources of news? Where were you finding this information?
Yeah, no, I typically read CNN, and then primarily a lot of my news was from TikTok, Instagram, and then I would go to like CNN and NBC.
And what was happening on campus the days after this? If your peer group, you think they were involved?
Yeah, so immediately I saw like flyers all over campus to join in on protests. It was very fast, in my opinion, how ready that people were mobilizing already and gathering people to come around and protest. And there was, I believe, like our first protest was like October 13th. And it was like a large crowd of people that came out and, flying pro-Palestine flags, wearing their keffiyehs. Yeah.
And you partook in all this?
Yeah, I mean, for one, I first came to just join because many of my friends are Arab and they invited me to come see them. And I joined in on community discussions that they were holding, discussing what happened pre-October 7th. And it's, they were saying, you have to look at the Nakba, you have to look at 1948 and what happened then, and that, October 7th happened to Gazans over and over again. So it wasn't really much pause in expressing sympathy for those that had lost their lives or were taken hostage on that day. And it was just kind of, discarded whenever October 7th came up as a part of the discussion.
What did you know about Israel and Gaza at that point? What was your source of knowledge?
At that point, I don't think I knew much about Israel and Gaza. To be honest, when I heard Free Palestine from the river to the sea, the other way, but I didn't know from what river to what sea. And I think that a lot of people that joined in on these protests were in the same boat as I was, not knowing very little to none information on the region. And so when we're making these chants, we don't understand that we want, what does free Palestine from all of that region, what does that even mean? And then what does a free Palestine look like? Does it look like committing October 7th until, Palestine is liberated and the whole country is Palestine? But these type of questions were not really asked because I think in a way they want to keep you in the dark and they want to have a general consensus that we all want to liberate Palestine. Now, if we get into the specifics on how to do so, we might differ. So we want to keep it on a service level. And that if we all can agree that to liberate Palestine, then maybe we can get you to agree for something further and something more radical. And so I think that was their primary tactic to get as many people on board as possible.
So one of the things I noticed in our encampment here in Lincoln Park was that only about 50% of the people there were students or members of the community. And that we had people wearing yellow vests. And when I would walk through and ask students questions about what river, what sea, or what do you think of all the anti-Semitism you're seeing and the signs around here, there would be people in yellow vests that would come quickly and take them away so that they couldn't speak to me anymore. What did you notice in terms of were most of the people at the Stanford campus from Stanford, or were there, who was the they that kept telling you things?
Yeah, no, it was definitely, there was a lot of people that were not even a part of Stanford that would show up, a part of the encampments, join us at the sit-ins and protests. I didn't think much of it, I just was oh wow, the community is really coming out. And it just kind of reinforced my belief that we're doing something impactful. But when we talk about, kind of being silenced to talk to outsiders, I had that experience as well. In the encampments, it was kind of, a rule in a sense that, to do not interact with Zionists unless you're a designated person. There was only a few people that would sit at this table to interact with others. But if you were not one of those people and you were just a participant, you were not allowed to interact, otherwise you'd be kicked out of this camp. And at first it was just, it was justified. Oh, well, you don't want to get put on, you don't want to get filmed and, say something and that makes us look bad. And so I never questioned it. And also they were saying that debate was totally pointless with, people that believe slaughtering babies is okay and like that are genocide apologists and etc. And so they would use these very like extreme terms in order to like not even let us talk to the opposing side. And then plus you have a sense of belonging where you don't want to get kicked out of the camp, right? You don't want to go against the grain and try to, question the narrative. But yeah, there was little to none interaction outside.
I hope you've come to see it's not necessarily opposing sides. We're all human beings. One of the things was after we broke our encampment up, after 3 weeks, was the response of the students wasn't, oh, we're not there helping the people of Gaza anymore. It was, I've been pulled out of something that was meaningful to me. I've been part of something that was greater than myself, and I've never felt that in my life again. Was there a sense of that among you and your peers?
Absolutely. So like I said, our camp was one of the longest running camps, but it was because we were facing threats by the campus, our administrators, like, hey, you guys have to like leave and clean up your guys' camp. And there were some people that refused, even with their academic, lives on the line, being suspended, threats of suspension, even threats of trespassing, right? That didn't matter. That was, again, it's being something greater than yourself. And so, and they also told us, to discard it, to not worry about it and to put everything at stake, your education at stake in order to fight and liberate Palestine. And so a lot of people still stayed, and I think some people did receive suspensions, more so like the organizers. But then, again, they say, oh, well, we received these suspensions because we were doing something impactful. And so it was a lot of reinforcement rather than realizing, we're kind of disrupting campus, not realizing that we're contributing to Jewish students feeling unsafe. I never found out really until I had met one of my closest, I would say my best friend to this day. And she has shared with me her experiences of being doxxed online by Stanford students for being a Zionist. And she had told me how scary it was and how other students had received swastikas on their doors. And she felt like Stanford University wasn't doing enough for its Jewish students, and that then they were very lenient on us staying and having our encampment there. But I just felt genuinely so bad when she was recounting this, and that's also part of the reason why I want to continue to show my face and try to have personal accountability for contributing, even though there wasn't directly and it was indirect. Still, I just I want to make up for what a lot of students won't make up for.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. It takes a great deal of courage to come from ignorance to knowledge and to make amends. So thank you for that. So let's talk about you traveling from San Francisco to Los Angeles, 7-hour car ride, and what made you do that big trip to come see the Nova Festival?
So that was in October of 2024. And I had received an email. At this time, I was still very pro-Palestine. I had received an email from my friend Julia Siegel, and she had emailed all sorts of communities, and it came through the Black community emailing list, and it was come see the Nova Festival, bear witness to the loss, and free trip to LA, so I was like, oh yeah, I have to go, you know. But yeah, so I don't know, I was hesitant. I was thinking, you know, oh, it's like APAC money that's spent on these, you know, these, you know, propaganda trips or whatever. I was still very deep in that mindset. But I did have like an ounce of curiosity. I was like, you know what, I hear October 7th all the time, and I don't really truly know what it is. When I heard about like the film festival itself, you know, I didn't really have an understanding of like what happened. I've heard a lot of justifications that like, why are you having a festival at near a contested border? And that's a horrible way of thinking. And then especially when you realize how small Israel is, and I just, there was a lot of justifications for that.
So you got this invitation to come to the festival. You're like, free trip to LA. So you're coming in and you walk into the exhibit, and what are you hit with? What are the reactions to what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think the most vivid was walking through the hallway with all the recordings and the videos. And that was my first time seeing any of the footage. And I was so shocked to see people my age and them, you know, crying on the phone, praying to God, talking to their mom, telling them I love you. I don't know, it hit me like a truck. I was just so confused that I just never saw any of this until now. And this was a year later, right? And then, you know, walking through and seeing the burnt cars and seeing, you know, again, people like even, you know, pre the attack, just seeing people dancing and enjoying themselves. And I could just think like that could have just been me. I would have went to a festival. I would have like done that. And just the fact that we never, as like being on the Palestine side, never discussed it in this detail. And so, yeah.
What was the piece that you mentioned, the cars and the videos? Was there something that it sounds like that the experience kind of opened your mind to thinking and to questioning? Do you remember when that happened, or what it was that made you suddenly go, maybe what I've been told isn't right?
Yeah, it was one of the recordings of Hamas, you know, calling his dad, saying that, I can't remember the exact words, but that he was very happy to have killed a Jew. And when I saw that, I didn't realize how horrific and the fact that he sounded so happy. And it was just terrifying to hear, especially since Hamas, the way that they portrayed it was that, you know, this is a resistance fighting group, that this is, you know, they were martyrs, and like this was a valiant act of bravery. And just to see that they were killing people that were civilians in their homes, I was just genuinely so like disgusted that we never like truly like condemned Hamas. You know, when Hamas came up as a part of our conversations, it was, you know, very much downplayed, and that they were just fighting against oppression. And even like the way that they described October 7th was that, oh, well, Hamas primarily targeted military bases, that this was a battle. And it was, and I realized later on the way that they justified it was that since Israelis have mandatory IDF service, that they're all technically soldiers. And again, they don't explain that bit of how they, you know, did the mental gymnastics to come to that conclusion. But I was just so shocked that we just never talked about it.
You have had several YouTube videos out there, and in one of the YouTube videos you said, quote, October 7th wasn't a headline, it was a catastrophe. Can you say more about what you meant?
Yeah. You know, it's more than statistics, you know, seeing the amount of people that died. You know, I just kind of thought, you know, there's many catastrophes like that. There's many people that die all over the world, and just kind of didn't really think too much of it. It's very easy to it's very easy to like not feel empathy when you're reading something versus when you're actually seeing it and seeing each person's story and hearing every single detail. And then you realize that, like, again, it wasn't just like one day. It's now been, you know, past few years and just constant belittling of the event, you know, and constant denial of anti-Semitism. And so in my mind, it is a catastrophe, just for Israelis, just for the Jewish community. And it was just, it truly like split our world in two.
Before and after, yeah. So you come back from this experience that was profound for you from this sound of it, and you know, walking through, when I was walking through earlier, I brought the DePaul Judge faculty here this afternoon, and there were parts we had trouble with, like the shoes and the backpacks, because it reminded us so much of Holocaust museums around the world. But those videos, that's not something we have from the Holocaust. So there's a power in that personal narrative that didn't exist before. But you came home, and then you go to Israel. So how'd that happen? For somebody who was, you know, pro-Palestine to decide to go visit Israel, that's a huge leap.
I do want to like back up before. What also kind of caused a bit of, before I took this trip, I was already starting to feel disillusioned by the pro-Palestine movement. At Stanford University, there was a huge protest that took place at our administrator's building, where 12 pro-Palestine students had broken in. It caused $700,000 in damages. And they spray painted graffiti such as "Pigs taste better when dead." They spray painted America with KKK in it. All sorts of very disgusting things. And I didn't attend this protest. I had heard about it afterwards. And when I read this, I was just like, how does this make Palestine any freer? How does, you know, defacing our school walls help in any capacity? And, you know, when I did talk to someone that was there, they were like, well, I mean, you know, property damage, you know, isn't worth more than a human life that's being lost in Gaza. And I'm just like, you know, okay. Like, I can't argue that, but it's just like, it's unnecessary. And you know, this just happened because in defiance to what our administrators, you know, said, you know, we're not going to be, you know, participating in like the BDS movement, which is like the boycott, defund,
divest and sanction.
Yes. So anyway, Stanford was like, you know, Stanford has a very neutral policy. In a way, they're very neutral to anti-Semitism, and within they're very neutral to the pro-Palestine cause. So yeah. So but no one was really happy with Stanford, but yeah. So when I first.
So I believe that incident was a break into the president's office. And the 12 people are being prosecuted by the Santa Clara County prosecutor.
Yeah.
And they were dismissed from the university as well, right?
Yes. And funny enough, I had received an email a few days ago by the prosecutor. And he asked me if I wanted to testify against the 12. Just because like the case has turned into like, they have them on video, right? They have their faces on video. But now the defense attorneys are turning it into, well, why were they protesting? And so the prosecutor has to go beyond just like seeing the evidence to like making this a Palestine versus Israel like conversation.
Almost like an end justifies the means
Yeah.
without acknowledging what they did was a violation of laws and campus policy,
Yeah.
threatening to people on campus.
Exactly. So, overall, that was like the first part of me being disillusioned, and then going to the Nova Music Festival caused so much like cognitive dissonance. I was so confused. I had so many questions, and I really didn't know where to begin to unravel all of this. Especially since I felt like whenever I did look up things on the media, like I read a lot of, very biased articles. I thought, the United Nations might be a good source, but then I find out later on that it's also biased. And then, the International Court of Justice, and they said that Israel's committing apartheid. So it felt like any source that I was turning to that I think would be neutral and weren't very neutral. So anyways, so I had a lot of questions, and later on, the people that had attended the Nova Music Festival exhibit received an invite to go on this perspectives trip that was sponsored by Hello to go to Israel. And when I saw this, I was so hesitant on whether or not to go. I knew that like if I posted about the trip, or if anyone found out that I had went on this trip, that I was going to lose friends. That was no question. And
Well, it sounds like you are also a question of who do you trust at this point. If we can't trust UN or government agencies, the only person you can trust is yourself and your own eyes. So it would make sense to want to see things firsthand.
yeah, that was, and I had to, just do it for myself. And I wanted to really see, like, on boots on the ground, how is it there? And so it was a 10-day trip. We flew in, and we first went to Jerusalem, and it was a gorgeous city. I was just so stunned. We went to the old city, where it has a Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and Armenian quarters, and I was just like, wow, it's so compact, And I'm like, I can't imagine, like, I was thinking, there must be like daily tension here, but I saw people interacting with each other, and day-to-day life isn't, like discrimination and segregation. They were, exchanging goods with each other and having friendly conversations. And I was like, okay, wow, this is, beautiful for one. And then I also got to, in a way, like, again, with being a part of the pro-Palestine movement, there was a lot of dehumanization of Israelis, and that they were, all racist and whatnot. But I was treated very, like, with a lot of hospitality. I felt welcomed and got free food and accommodated, and it was just a very beautiful, those were my first few days, yeah.
Did you find the apartheid or be able to expect?
No, we did see, separated Palestinian villages and Israeli villages. However, that's not necessarily segregation, it's separation. And it's okay if, communities gather and stay within their communities. But the way that it made it seem was that, like, Palestinians really couldn't go into Jewish places, and very much like, I remember one of their examples was like Jim Crow segregation that was happening, and I didn't really feel like that way at all. But we also got to see like mixed cities, and I think like that part was very beautiful. That again, it is very integrated. And it's okay if it's also separated.
Did you post? You said you're concerned you would lose friends if you're away. Did you post?
I I did. I posted before the trip. I was like, hey, just anyone, if you guys have any questions, I'm going to Israel Palestine. Let me know. And I got a flood of people saying, like, why are you going to Israel during a genocide? and I'm like, I'm just trying to see for myself. And immediately, like, I lost followers without even really, like, a conversation, without a question. Just the fact that I said, I'm going to a place. and then I even during the trip, I didn't really post much of anything because, for one, I didn't want to make it seem like it was tourism. Every single day that we were part of this trip, it was education. We had speakers, Palestinian, Bedouin, Druze, Jews, and we also got to eat different food and try out different like customs, and it was just it was a very educational experience. And so I didn't want to post me having fun and be like, oh, this is tourism during like this war, but yeah, it immediately losing people. And then I had posted Israelis that were protesting against the government in hopes that like people could see that not all Israelis agree with Bibi and how he's running things. A lot of people are dissatisfied, and hopefully it can make people think and separate Israelis from their government, which we don't give the grace.
So you're here now. I'm gathering you're not part of Students for Justice in Palestine anymore. What groups are you involved with now on campus? I mean, you're still, a young student at a college. You still want to have a life and a good campus experience. So now you lost these followers, you lost some friends. So who now are your friends and your peers you spend time with?
Yeah. So one more bit about the trip.
Yeah,
I want to mention. On our third day there, we had experienced a missile attack, and
this was a Houthi missile.
Yeah.
That was fired across. Okay.
Yeah, and our guide had told us, to get on the floor because we were not close enough to get to the bomb shelter, and that was the longest 10 minutes of my life. We were just had my hands over my neck, and I was just praying to God. I was like, oh my God, please, please don't let this be like the 3% of times that it goes through. And I heard the Iron Dome hit it, and I was a bit relieved, but then I also was scared about the shrapnel. And I was just thinking, I don't know how Israelis deal with this every single day, and numerous times at that. And just the fact that that was just so shocking. And, I think as an American, we have such a sense of safety here. We have a privilege that at that time it got stripped from me. And I was just, I wasn't aware that that we had this privilege. We're not in a constant state of war. And so when leftists have this kind of bloodlust against America and kind of want to kind of spark a war here or a revolution, especially with the normalization of a lot of murders, for instance, the Charlie Kirk, they don't realize how horrible violence is, because we have that cushion, we have that sense of comfort. And so anyways, when I was there, I think that was when I gained the most empathy, and I was I can't imagine experiencing this and how it would make me feel towards these terrorist groups. So yeah, I understood. And so post that, I joined I attended the meetings. I didn't join JSA, and I also
JSA being the Jewish
Association. Yeah, I just went to the meetings, and I also went to the ISA as well. And so And from this experience, like I had made so many like Jewish friends, and they would invite me to Shabbat. I would also go to Chabad, and it was just so lovely to have like these dinners, and I just saw like the Jewish community being like so like tight, and it was like an experience I never felt I had, you know, even within my own community, just to be able to gather and eat dinner, to debate with each other. Me and my friends disagree all the time, and that was like new to me. You know, again, being in an echo chamber, you kind of want to have all the same thoughts, but no, my friends disagree with me, and it's always a lovely conversation. We always talk about our differences, and we also, I try to tell my friends, have no disclaimers, because a lot of times, like, they're like, you know, I don't want to come off as insensitive, or, you know, they might have some questions about, you know, what Black people might think about, you know, Israel. They might think about, oh, what do they think about Jews, etc. Or like they might share their own misconceptions. But I also have my misconceptions, and I tell them, you know, let's just talk freely and try to get to the bottom of whatever questions you might have. And so I think that like now that like type of like political correctness has gone quite far in like leftist groups, where we're not able to really find out our differences and find the middle ground. It's just like, you know, don't offend me, you know. But yeah.
So you talked in one video about Rabbi Herschel marching with Reverend King, and this summer I got the chance to meet Benjamin Chavez. And how do we build allyship between communities? How have you been doing that?
I think the most important thing to know that allyship isn't transactional. It doesn't mean to, you know, hey, I give you something, you have to give me something in return. It just starts by taking the little steps to, for one, ask questions and listen. I think at the very beginning of my journey, I asked my Jewish friends so many different questions, and they were patient enough to answer all of them. And I think it's important to give people grace when they might not know as much. So it first starts with asking questions, and then also participating in that community. Like I said, I would go to Shabbat. I went to the Israeli Independence Day. I went to different community just days at Hillel. And I think it's important to just show up as non-Jewish and just say like, hey, I'm here, you know? And so I think in the same way, Jewish can also come to African-American events, you know, and learn more from us. And I think we have so much in common in terms of our histories, in terms of like, you know, having that same, like, you know, that discrimination and facing persecution. We can learn so much from each other, and we can find so much common ground. And I think, you know, I know it's difficult. I know.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
I just want to say that it's very important to take the time and reach more people that you might think won't change, but they very much could. And I think that hope isn't all lost. I think that there's more people like me out there, but they just haven't had the chance to even begin to learn about the other side. They haven't had the chance to have these type of conversations. And even the people that are so far gone, and that might seem closed-minded, if you are able to talk to them, and I think if you come and approach it in a way of empathy for their ignorance, I think it can help a lot. But I know it's difficult to do something like that, and especially when a lot of people are very set in their ways. But I know for me, I wouldn't be here without the Jewish community's welcoming arms and their guidance and their patience. So I think it's just important to try to give grace.
Well, to use your own terms, thank you for showing up today. Appreciate that. And, thank you for sharing your story. And so much of this exhibit is about sharing stories, because that is how we as human beings can communicate our experiences and our tragedies and our joys. So thank you, Taryn.
Professor Klugman for helping out and asking the right questions. I want to personally thank you for having the critical thinking, for being able to ask questions beyond what is told to you. We see so many people who are incapable of that. And so truly, thank you. Thank you for having that thinking, and thank you for being here today. It really means a lot to us.